Hello, all of you. Welcome back. We will now learn about the object-oriented, programming concepts. So this is where we stopped in the last class, that is structured and unstructured programming. Today we'll learn about what is object-oriented programming, which is the major concept in VB.NET. Okay, as well as not just VB.NET, even in Java. Okay, so basically Java is, I would say, entirely object-oriented programming language. So we'll just try to understand what's the purpose of an object here. So whenever we say an object, it is nothing but an entity, okay? And it says oriented means interested in a particular kind of thing or object, okay? And it says in layman terms, it's a programming pattern that rounds around an object or entity are called object-oriented programming. And it says object-oriented programming is basically a computer programming design methodology that organizes the model's software design around the data or objects rather than the function and the logic. Okay, so data is given more importance here. And it says an object is referred to as a data field that has unique attributes as well as behaviors. Okay, and everything in object-oriented programming is grouped as self-sustainable objects. So whenever we say object-oriented programming, these are the fundamental points that we need to remember. So what is it? It says everything is an object. For example, let's take a pen. Okay, so this is an object, right? uh, Anything that we see around us are nothing but objects, right? They have its own property, they have their own unique features, right? They have their own attributes. Okay, so it says the developer manipulates the objects that uses the message passing, and we'll just see what message passing is later. Okay, and it says every object is an instance of a class. Remember, a very important definition. And see, whenever we say an object, it's an instance of a class. For so what is a class? So for example, okay, there's a pen here, right? So let's say I have, okay, a collection of pens here, right? Let's assume that. So now a collection of pen, okay, is a class, which denotes, the pen class, right? And one pen, okay, is an instance of that class. Okay, for example, let's say students, right? So there are many students here, correct? And so you are called as one class, and every student here is an instance of that particular class. So an instance of a class, okay, becomes an object. I hope now you all understood what an object is and what a class is. Okay, so it says the class contains the attribute and behavior associated with an object. So there are certain features of an, whenever we say oops, that is object oriented, okay, programming. So the first thing it says object, which is nothing but just now we saw it's an instance of a class. And class is the blueprint of an object, right? It helps us to understand, who are, or let's say, how many objects are there, or let's say, what is that object that is there within the class, right? And encapsulation. Whenever we say capsule, if you all would have, imagined, or, if all of us know what a capsule is, right? Something that is, being protected. There is some ingredient, or let's say there is some data that is being protected, right? We call that as an encapsulation. And here in this terminology, it is you are encapsulating or you are trying to protect the data. And the next one is the polymorphism. So it says different behaviors at different instances. Poly means many, so how the objects would behave in different instances, right? So that's what we will see here. And abstraction, it says hiding the irrelevant data is called as the abstraction. Okay. And inheritance, so whenever we say inheritance, okay, property of one object being acquired by another object. So that is called as inheritance. So these are the most important features of OOPS. Okay, we call it as OOPS. Okay, and as I, just now I just spoke about it, okay, what an object is. So it says it's an entity, it has attribute, behavior, and properties, okay. And object is an instance of a class. It definitely, whenever we say instance of a class, it definitely occupies some space in the memory of the system, okay. So here comes an example, okay, wherein which they've given an example of a pen, which I did, and table, person, okay. And the next thing is class. It's nothing but it's a collection of objects. We also call it as a blueprint of an object. And it says a set of attributes, also called as a state, which is represented by variables and properties. And behavior is represented by methods. Okay. And class is a user defined data type. Remember, a class is a user defined data type. Why? Because if you see, okay, how do we in the further classes we'll see, okay, how we can create a class, and uh, it's basically class and then class name. So class itself is a data type, right? Like for example, we had int a is an integer then, right? So similarly here, um, so that's all about it. Inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, no, encapsulation. We have dealt with each and every one of them. Okay, I just explained right now. And in detail, it says abstraction hide the background detail and shows the essential details from the user. For example, okay, let's say a phone call. Okay, so for example, only the phone number gets displayed when we get a phone call, right? We do not know from which location it's coming from, right? Those details. See, if you want to track it down, you'll be able to get those details. But on the front, definitely you will not be able to see. It's just the number that that's visible. Okay. And the email, right? For example, the emails that we get, we don't know what's the user's exact name. We identify the user with their email name, right? Or I would say not email name, email ID. Yeah, let me put it across like that. So the next one is encapsulation. As I said, wrapping of data as well as the code is called as encapsulation. And inheritance, I spoke about it. Properties of one class, okay, and whichever class is inheriting the property of the base class, which is also called as a parent class, okay. So that's all about inheritance. And here comes the examples of kids, okay, wherein which kids inherit a lot of features from their parents. And the next thing is the polymorphism. As I told you, poly means many, and morphism is more than one form. Yes, students. So we will continue this in the next session. Thank you.